Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to let you know that here in just a few minutes you're going to have an opportunity to listen to the question and answer period that I did with our local media this morning regarding the release of the KRW report. And I'd like you to know that it is with a heavy heart that we are having to rebuild the agency from an area that we really had no responsibility in creating. But it is also with a commitment to our community and a commitment to each other that we do this openly and honestly, and that we do so with as much transparency as possible. We intend on using the KRW report as a backbone for an 8-year strategic plan, even though we're going to conclude most of the items recommended in that report within the next 18 months. And I know that it's going to be difficult to wait that long. You've waited a long time already. But I think that in the end, everyone will be excited to see where we come in the future. Thank you for taking the time, and let us know if there's any other questions that remain. The report is KRW and Associates. The KRW is Kramer, Rangay, and Williams. Kramer is obviously Lauren Kramer, the former chief of police at the Colorado Springs Police Department and former city manager. The R is Fred Rangay, who is a former chief of police in Fort Collins. Teaches at the graduate school of at DU, I believe. And W is Jerry Williams, the former chief for the Aurora Police Department. All basically tried and true professional leaders. They formed a group several years ago, KRW and Associates, and their job, what they do is organizational assessments. They come in as independent reviewers of policies and procedures and operational items, and they take a clean look at it. And based on everything that the El Paso County Sheriff's Office had gone through over the past several years and the trust level or lack of trust at that point, we decided that the best thing that we could do was to start fresh and bring in subject matter experts to conduct a multifaceted assessment of the agency, from law enforcement to HR issues to the operation of the detentions facility, and everything in between, policies, procedures, etc. We started having the discussions about using KRW in the mid to late 2014. We knew that the trust level was going to be questioned in the beginning, and so we felt like the group that they could bring to bear would get better trust from the employees and in turn from the public. And so we started out having some discussions with them and tried not to limit their scope at all, and just said, come in and tell us what works, what doesn't work, what we can fix, what we should fix, and things that are working fine. And so they started in February. They interviewed roughly 200 different employees out of the agency, which is about 25%. They conducted 12 different focus groups in different areas throughout the agency and asked a series of questions of the same questions of each employee and each group. And then they went back and figured out the answers to the areas that they've spelled out in the report. It took quite a while. We were getting, as the process was going on, we were getting feedback from them about some things that were critical issues that we needed to work on right away, and we started working on those fairly early on. We were making some course corrections along the way that helped us, and we have made a series of policy changes to cope with those. The report came out in its draft form in early June, and we as a staff sat down and went over the draft and identified areas that we needed to work on, critical issues we needed to work on. And so we held a workshop, and I believe that was in July, was when we did our workshop. And we had all of the staff, sergeants, lieutenants, commanders, at this 2-day workshop where we went over all of the topics and issues before we published the final document, made a few adjustments to it, and what you have now is the final published report. It's been shared with all the county commissioners, the county attorney's office. It's been shared with all of the staff at the sheriff's office, the employees of the sheriff's office. And we feel like it's something that the public needs to see as well. And you know, we're excited for some of it. Some of it we were anticipating, and we've made the appropriate adjustments. So we will use this to develop our strategic plan for the remainder of this term and for another. We're laying out an 8-year strategic plan based on the findings in this and some changes that we've got set up. So let's have some questions.
One thing that comes out a lot is communication. Whether it's, I don't know, red door staff meeting kind of reports that were sent out, or just maybe communication on rehiring or hiring. Have there been any maybe changes related to that, or was that something that was new or unsure about, kind of what this report would find in terms of how things are being communicated to staff members?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we've made considerable changes to that. Number one, our staff meetings are much more involved. Our staff meetings typically are every Wednesday, and they have been running 4 hours or so for a group of 18 to 20 people. We also, as a staff, we are attending every in-service training. So every week we have a group of employees that attend an in-service training, and I spend roughly 2 hours a week just in a question-answer session for employees to help spread that. And in addition, just like we did on the release of this, we are making videos that we release to the agency over our intranet. And so they are anywhere from a couple of minute snippets to 10 to 15 minutes, depending on what the issue is, to help communicate where we're headed on different things. So the whole point has been to try and increase communication. We now have a weekly publication that goes out with staff minutes, along with different things that go out throughout the agency, and that's emailed to every employee as well as being posted on our intranet as well. And so the idea is to try and increase the level of communication from the top all the way down to an unprecedented level.
Why is this something that has to be done over 8 years? Are there, it seems kind of slow for change. What's the reason?
Well, the overall time frame is 8 years. The completion of the 40 items on here will happen roughly in about 18 months. It's the implementation of these 40 items are fairly short. However, the strategic plan that we're developing is an 8-year strategic plan. We have the shorter range items are the completion of these. I would tell you roughly 20% of the recommendations will be completed within the next month. Roughly 50% will be complete by the end of the year. Sometime in 2016, we will complete the majority, and a few are going to take a couple of years. A few of them are capital items. A few of them are ongoing projects that are going to just take us a while to implement. But this is, like I keep getting reminded, this is a big boat. This is the largest sheriff's office in the state. We run the largest criminal justice facility or largest jail outside of the Department of Corrections. It's a big boat, and it's going to take a while to turn it. And it's going to take a while to rebuild the trust of not only the employees, but the trust of the community.
I want to ask you about that, because that's one of the things that's really highlighted is sort of that broken trust, like you said, within the organization and within the community.
Absolutely.
How do you get there?
You know, I think that the report spells out some of the ideas. I think part of it is like was asked before about communication. I think we have to be open and honest in our communication. I think that we have to be available to answer the tough questions from our employees, and we have to have a plan. I think that before there were so many things that were siloed that it did not appear that there was an agency-wide plan. And so because of that, we've drafted new mission, vision, and value statement that we'll be releasing very soon. And we have drafted a new patrol philosophy on how we intend to do business in the community. We are working on supervisory training through nationally recognized LPO courses, which is leadership in police organizations, with implementing a character-first training policy that we will hire for character and we will train for competence. And we will work on all of those issues. We have to do this slowly and methodically, but we also have to do this with a purpose. And that's kind of where we're headed. And I think that right now, a majority of our personnel see that. I think that, and I've used the analogy, about 80% of the people row the boat all the time. We're working on the remaining 20%.
You talked about some of these changes being things that you guys anticipated. What were some of the ones that you did not see coming? Some of those issues, I guess.
It's hard. I mean, it's hard to say. There were a couple of assessments out of investigations, for instance, tracking cases that we thought that was being done in a little more effective manner, but we're going to work on how to track critical investigations better and get those assigned and keep a better handle on those. I think that some of the assessments that we believed existed, I think the perception of others in the agency was that it was being done better than it really was. And we kind of thought that there would be issues. We made changes almost immediately on some cases. We started, for instance, an assessment of how manpower was being assigned. And when we got that back, we now have a scientific method for the number of people we need in patrol, the number of people we need in investigations, the number of people we need assigned to detention floor security, for instance. And then the level of supervision that's appropriate for that number of personnel. I don't think that was ever done before. And I think that some of that was a culture shock to the employees. We reduced the number of personnel assigned to patrol, for instance, by a slight margin, but we increased the number of personnel in detention's floor security based on needs assessments. And because of that, it's a shift that rather than using a national model, for instance, on patrol that says you need four officers per 1,000 population served, we went back and analyzed calls for service trends, and then we redistrict all of the patrol division in different areas, and now we assign personnel based on calls for service load, not based on population assessments. And I think we've got a much more applicable personnel load or a personnel assignment than ever before. And that gives us a better picture of the number of people we need assigned to patrol division using a manning factor. For instance, when we first started this, we had 8 patrol districts, and we added a 9th for Falcon. We found that calls for service loads in security and calls for service loads in the Cimarron Hills area require 2 cars. And so once we assigned all those things out, we knew that we needed 11 cars 24 hours a day in order to handle that assignment. We needed to compensate for sick and vacation and holiday time, training time. So we added 3 additional people, 14 per shift. We apply a manning factor of 5.6, tells us we need 79 people assigned to patrol. Fairly simple. Then we said above those 79, we need 1 supervisor for every 6 employees, and we spread that out. So we now have a scientific method for the number of people assigned to patrol. We'll see that play out down the road. We did the same thing for detentions floor security, the same thing for court security and court and transport personnel based on the number of courtrooms that our deputies service in the courthouse. And so by doing that, we feel like we can justify that. Now, it was some adjustment from where it was before, but the changes are negligible from the numbers, but they're much more scientifically applied.
One
Right.
thing,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Steve?
one thing that came up was training, supervision training, and reportedly deputies have often been promoted without any supervisory training. Was that something that you were aware of, or was it a surprise?
No, it wasn't a surprise. Actually, we've looked at that over the last year as we started our planning process. We looked at that, and so one of the changes is this LPO process, this Leadership in Police Organizations. Now that is a 3-week school over 3 months, so it's fairly intensive. It's one that we're co-oping with the County Sheriffs of Colorado and the Colorado Springs Police Department. We'll put 12 of our lieutenants and sergeants through that school starting next month. We're working on bringing another one in to start right after the first of the year, with the goal of getting all of our leadership through the LPO school. 2 months ago, we did 5 sessions of a Character First leadership school. That Character First leadership school hosted 50 people per course, and we did 5 courses that included leaders from all area law enforcement agencies, CSPD, El Paso County, Fountain. For the first time ever, we hosted this character-based leadership course. We now have 2 people from the Sheriff's Office and 2 people from CSPD who have now trained with this company, Strata Leadership, to present this to law enforcement in our agencies. And so now we can train their 8 different segments locally at a combined cost savings that's unbelievable. So that's part of that supervision training. We are sending people to staff level development training as much as we can. We'll have several that will attend the IACP conference in Chicago later this year. We will attend the National Sheriff's Conference later this year. And those are things that will help develop our leadership group tremendously. So we're excited for how we will be able to develop the leadership.
But that takes time, right?
It takes time. It's not something, we don't have that portal of knowledge that we can run them through. These guys they're all seasoned cops. They know what they're doing law enforcement wise. We need to get them up to speed with some leadership principles and legal matters that we're working on.
Kind of adding to that leadership, one of the things that stood out to me was that the assessment said it was clear that there was significant vicarious trauma throughout the organization. I kind of touched on how a large segment of the workforce felt abandoned by those in leadership roles. Can you kind of talk to me about how you felt when you kind of read that part of the assessment?
Yeah, when we reviewed the assessment, we had a chance to review it with the presenters, with the assessment team. And so we were able to kind of drill down to what they meant by that vicarious trauma. And there were a lot of things that went on over the waning previous term that were seen as pretty harsh treatment of employees. And whether employees were actually treated that way personally or not, it created issues where they were fearful of their positions and their jobs and backing, et cetera. We were kind of shocked at the level that people talked about. And in addition to that, the assessors, they don't feel like they still got to the bottom of it. So we've taken some steps to kind of create a safe harbor for people. We moved our staff psychologist off site so that she can visit with employees that need to counsel with greater anonymity, and she has found that her visits have increased dramatically over the last couple of months, and that was specifically what we're after. In fact, I just left a meeting with her and one of her sidekicks, for lack of a better term, just a little bit ago, and I spent an hour over there talking about how we can do things better, and we're going to start working on a peer support group, and some peer mentoring with regard to these vicarious trauma issues. It is something that we will deal with here for quite a while, and so, but it's a priority.
If we already know this, I apologize, but how much did the study cost to do?
You know, I don't have the number right off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I probably should have grabbed it up. Do you remember? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind finding out, we'll find out what it cost. It was an agenda item in early February with the county commissioners. We presented it with a recommendation to contract with KRW. I just, right off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Sheriff, what do you see as the impact that this study may or may not have at all on, you know, your mission here to keep the community safe?
You know, I think the first thing is that the study is going to show our community of our willingness to have an outside, uninterested party group come in and do an assessment and give the truth to the community. And what I'm hoping is the community will see that by us sharing the report in its entirety, it is, you'll notice when you go through it, it's not redacted in any way, that the community will see that as difficult as it may be to lay this out, we are willing to say, these are the problems, and this is where we're headed. And as a community, because we're part of the community too, as a community, we will accept that responsibility, and we will move forward, and we will solve it, and we will show you as we move through this process how we're doing. And we will prove that we are worthy of the confidence of this community. And that's where I think the community's best interest is played. We're not trying to hide anything. Does that help?
That was transparency. I mean,
Exactly.
the meeting you're talking about, that's part of that.
Exactly. And it is meant to show that we will be completely transparent. This report was shared with the commissioners last week, and I've availed myself to any questions that they may have. And you know, I'm actually excited that we now have targets. We have goals with measurable outcomes. We will address, there's 44 specific items. And what we did as a staff is we broke them down to individual items. We then took each individual item and we assigned it a task number. We then assigned each individual task to a staff member or a group of staff members, and we gave them a priority list and a timeline to complete them. Now, some of the tasks, while we will address them, we may not make any changes. Some of them will require some fairly significant work. Taking some of our contracts for medical services, for food services, and other things, it will require that we take them back out to bid, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad. One of the requirements or one of the recommendations was that detox probably didn't belong in the organization, and so detox has been moved back to the county. Another one was on pretrial services, and so we've removed that and it has been returned to the county. So part of that relieves us from some responsibility, and I think that's a good thing. It allows us to focus on narrower targets. I think that the next biggest one was on policy review, and so we will be replacing our policy manual, which has been adapted over a period of years and is about 4 inches thick. We'll be replacing that with Lexapol within the next 60 days, and Lexapol is a nationally developed policy manual for public safety that is based on best practices and court decisions. It's done by a prominent attorney out of California, Gordy Graham, And you can see that online, and we're really excited for having a streamlined policy manual that everybody can understand and train to and get to know. I think that there's just a lot of promise ahead for what this policy or what this assessment does for us.
What's the after action like for those 44 items on that list? I mean, is that kind of where you're laying out that 18-month timeline, or what does that look like?
Exactly. We will develop, like I said earlier, we'll develop our strategic plan based on that, and then we'll annually complete a variance report based on those strategic plans, and we'll be able to identify, did we achieve the goal, are we short of the goal and we're still working on it, or have we put the issue to bed because it's been resolved another way. So that's the action plan, and each of the action plans is laid out in each one of these assignments. So as they get handed out to the different staff members, they know where they're headed, and we're assigning that out to the appropriate staff member for completion.
So one of the recommendations that came up, there was, if you could recommend one internal change within the sheriff's office, what would it be? Discussion of potential favoritism, impression of favoritism in hiring and rehiring. Was that something that came up from the previous administration? Was it some of the hires that maybe you made since you became sheriff? Did you get an impression of where this kind of perception was?
Yeah, I think it was talking about, it was discussing the hiring from the previous administration. When they started this analysis in February, other than the staff that I brought back in, and all of my staff that came in had all either been here previously or were here, and were all staff members in the previous administration at one point or another. Every single person that was brought in had the El Paso County Sheriff's Office heritage, and so that's why I'm fairly certain that this discussion in the report is about the hiring and promotion practices from the previous administration. Since then, we have changed the method of promotion and removed command staff from the equation. Those decisions are made by the direct leaders, and as someone is recommended to be promoted, the promotion is made by staff, but the recommendations are based on the interviewers at that direct supervisor level. That helps. The hiring practices will be done independent of staff. While we have input, we won't be directing those decisions. Does that help? Does that answer the question? Anybody else?
You talked about it at the beginning, but just to kind of hit it again, what really spurred this? I mean, this is a big project. Was it just that morale was low? Was it that a new administration was coming in? And do you think that it was spurred particularly by the previous administration, or is this kind of systemic things that have been going on for a long time?
Yes. I think it's all of those. I think that, you know, if we remember what went on over the final 6 months of 2014 and the investigation conducted by Mountain States Employment Council, the investigations by CBI that started close to the end of the year, the issues that had gone on with the changeover and the lack of any kind of turnover. You know, we had no handoff, we had no, and I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but yeah, we had no transition. There was no transition plan, and this is a big agency not to do that with. And so we knew that those issues, like we discussed earlier with the vicarious trauma, we knew that existed, and we knew that the best way to get that trust back was to hire someone that would give us a true look, a completely blind look at it. They serve, they don't serve any purpose if they don't tell the truth about what they saw. And we knew that that was going to be necessary to give the agency credibility again. And so we were willing to take that best shot. But it needed to be done. It needed to be done for not only us as the staff to have credibility, but as the community as a whole to have credibility with us. That it? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.